The other big question I get asked when I tell people that I'm an actor, I'm still getting used to this, I've only been doing this a year, it's not really a question, it's a look. Like I get a grimace, and it's always about not really a good time, is it? Okay, I concede that this might be the worst time in Hollywood history to try to break into Hollywood. That's probably true. But here's the thing, I'm not actually trying to break into Hollywood. I think I have lots of opinions on this. And on the one hand, I don't really have the experience to have an informed, I'll leave it at that, an informed opinion about this. I'm outside looking in. But I do have an outside looking in perspective. I'm not trying to act like I'm an expert on Hollywood. I'm not. I have 25 years of marketing under my belt, and in the marketing world, I've worked with tons of different businesses and lots of industries. So I do think I have a good point of view coming from a perspective of business, and I have a pretty good point of view coming into the theater as I look around the brand new green baby boy. And so I think that will maybe provide some perspective on this whole thing, on the problem with Hollywood and the business of Hollywood and the industry as a whole. Let me start with saying what my perspective is coming in, not knowing anything. When I first started this work about a year ago, I saw almost immediately that the available jobs were very limited. We have to go to breakdowns and look at these breakdown services to find work, and there just isn't a lot of work available to choose from for non-union. I can't speak on union, but in social media and anecdotally, I hear union members saying that this is the worst year they've had on record. It's worse than, I've heard it said that it was worse than when the strikes were going on. So there isn't any work, I can tell, really for non-union, and I'm hearing that there isn't any work for union. I'm also hearing that's the case for crews, not just actors. So I heard one person say, who was a crew member, I heard him say that he had gone to Universal Studios. That'd be a dream, right? Actually getting to work at Universal Studios in a studio on one of the sound stages. But he had gone in and he was really worried because when you go to Universal after a certain time, it's impossible to find parking. And so he was really stressed out and worried because he was going to the gig and he didn't know if he was going to find parking. And he went and the lots were empty. And it shocked him. And he, in his 20 years, I think he said, he had never seen anything like that. It's alarming. It's alarming. And then I'm also seeing on the news about how production has plummeted in Los Angeles. And it's not just Los Angeles. Production has also plummeted in Atlanta, where a lot of Los Angeles production went to a few years ago. And it's starting to pick up in places like London, because that's where Marvel's moving. And London has installed a whole bunch of new studios, right? And so when I come back here and I'm looking at LA production, it's really low. We have tons of production spaces in this city. And what I'm hearing from the news is that they are being so underutilized. It has never happened this way before. That they're just open production spaces all over the city. And so a lot of people don't realize this. I didn't realize this until I started working in this field, is that how many production facilities there are in LA. And you think about the big studios, the Warner Brothers, the Fox, the Disney, all that, Universal, but there are all of these smaller production studios everywhere in places you wouldn't even expect. Like you could be in some big warehouse district and there's just a full-on sound stage just in the middle of a bunch of warehouses, and in that sound stage you'll find a hospital, a restaurant, a bar, an office, and there's all these sort of standing sets that are around. And it's not just, those are everywhere, but there are also these standing sets out in the boonies in places like Santa Clarita or Lancaster, out in the desert or in the mountains, that are just, full-on villages that are just built there and are used for movies. And they're so cool when you see them. But when you think about all of the established production places, it's staggering. And to hear that they're not being fully utilized is alarming. So this is all the stuff that I've seen anecdotally. There is no work. Production seems to be fleeing, and there is no, and the facilities that are in place are being underutilized. So this looks like it's a studio problem. The studios are not producing here. It also looks like an independent film problem because the mid-tier and low-tier sets and standing sets and studios aren't being used. That is okay. That makes sense why there's no work. Now, why is that happening? Lots and lots of reasons, and everybody will tell you something different. Just, again, outside looking in, what it appears to be is that the money people behind movies are not able to get a return on their investment anymore. Why? Number one, there is no long tail business in Hollywood anymore. In other words, in the olden days, if something wasn't doing well at the theaters, you could count on DVD or VHS sales to make up the difference, and you could break even there or make a profit there, and then you get into other distribution channels. Everything's moved to streaming, so there is no long tail. There are licensing agreements with streamers, and there are theatrical releases. So the licensing deals are terrible for artists. We had a whole strike on this, right? And so you're not getting that back end for acting, but you're also not getting it as a money person, as an investor. You're just not getting that money back like you were in the olden days. So a whole lot more focus is put on the theatrical release. That is being cannibalized by streaming, which we already saw lawsuits and stuff about this. But people are also not turning out to theaters. And so there's a catch-22 going on. Again, outside looking in, and I have seen some data to support this. But anecdotally, people are not going to movie theaters because, A, it's very expensive, and we are in very hard times right now. I'd been trying to see more movies, and I just going to a matinee and getting some popcorn, I'm out $30, $40. And then I go with my wife, we're out $80 as a household. We're looking at $100 to go see a movie. Ouch. I'm a working actor, dude. I can't afford that. And I'm not the only one. People can't afford it. But the other thing that's happening is if you are going, you're seeing a lot of the same stuff because Hollywood investors are trying to bet on sure things because they're not getting a return. So they're trying to buy only movies and projects that they know will have audiences, that they know they're sure things. That's why they're so focused on IP. They know that people turn out for these particular superheroes, or they know people turn out for these franchises, so that's where they put their money because they know people are going to turn out. That's why we're getting a lot of the same kinds of stuff over and over again. Or they'll bank on nostalgia, and they know that we all liked a movie in the 90s or in the 80s, and so they're going to remake that movie because they know that they can hit that nostalgia audience and it will turn out. They also know we like certain IP like Minecraft and all the billions of people that play it. So that's a built-in audience. We're going to make a Minecraft movie. That's why it's not because Hollywood doesn't have ideas. It's because Hollywood doesn't have any bankable ideas that they can say, for sure, we are going to get an audience for this. And then they'll put out an original movie and nobody sees it. And so they start banking on these other stuff. And that makes it a very tight talent pool, but also makes it a tight group of IP that they're using. It's very limited, so we're getting a bunch of the same stuff. So people aren't turning out. So we have this downward spiral. People aren't turning out, so they're getting IP where they will have built-in audiences, and because there's too much of that, people aren't turning out. And it's expensive, and this, all these. So it really does feel like the industry's in something of a free fall. I think that a lot of people in my space are looking to blame the investors. I think there is a lot of money through nefarious capitalist machines that are behind movies, but I also don't think it's entirely the capitalist machine's fault. I think that the problem is the technology and the advancement of the technology. It's that we don't have downstream monetization like we used to. And so they're having to make decisions that they hadn't had to make before. They can't take risks anymore. And so that's what's happening in Hollywood. We're going to, first of all, there's that. We can't take risks, so we're going to go and do sure things only. Let's just take Marvel as an example. That's why we're seeing a lot of Marvel and a lot of DC all the time. And the cost of production is so high, we're going to have to minimize that. And the thing that I saw, I brought up London earlier, the thing that I saw was being a primary motivator for moving Marvel to London was healthcare. The cost of paying for people's healthcare in the United States is just too high. They can hire in London, we're talking about crews mostly, not necessarily cast, but they can hire in London and not have to pay for health care because there's universal health care in London. So the very policies that were supposedly driving our economy or was driving productions out. The other big thing that became a huge deal over the summer was what's going on with permitting. And when I first got into this, I was like, how bad could this be? I looked it up and I was like, okay, it's $1,000 for a week on permitting. What's the big deal? Then I started doing pre-production on projects that I wanted to do. Okay, so here's what I found. I wanted to do something in Venice Beach, right? So to do that, first of all, I would need to go to Film LA and get a $1,000 permit for a week, right? Then I'd have to go to the Venice itself as part of another jurisdiction that requires additional permitting. So I'd have to get another, I think it was like another $500 permit just to be in Venice, right? Now, on top of that, because of the nature of the shoot, stunts are involved. The stunt coordinator is required. There's another $1,000, maybe $1,200. Then because of that, there needed to be a police and fire presence. So we're looking at another, I think it was another $1,000, $2,000. But anyway, after I got done tallying all that would have cost, it would have been $5,000 just to do a shoot on Venice. And that is for a non-budget project. So you multiply that by 4 for a month, by 3 for 3 months, by all of the other costs are involved for all of the other locations. And you're looking at a ridiculous amount of money for permitting. Now, if I wanted to go to basically any other state, let's say I wanted to go to Nevada and do it, there's basically no permit. So you save, on my case, it would have saved $5,000 just by going over the border, right? So there's something seriously wrong with it. Then I started looking into it. LA Film, many people say, is a total corrupt organization, that they are skimming everything that they can, and it's supposed to be a nonprofit. There's a lot of profit happening. And so the city stepped up and they were trying to make a lot of this go away, but there are contracts in place that blah, 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 blah. But apparently they've eased some of the requirements on permitting so independent movies can actually shoot there. And then on top of that, Newsom and California get together to do some better incentives. So it's actually started getting some TV productions back, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, there's all these other things going on. All of this to say, and I haven't been checking my time, I've been doing this for 13 minutes, all right. All of this to say, this is not a good time to get into Hollywood because of all of these reasons. But I'm not necessarily trying to get into audio. Obviously, if I were invited to be on a feature production by a major studio, I would flip. But that's not really my strategy. I would love to end up there someday. My strategy is really on the independent scene. And I believe that given this coin that I just laid out, there's a flip side to it. And where there is all of this struggle and all of these obstacles, there's an opportunity. And I'm looking now at ways to create movies on the cheap and get them to audiences and clever that take advantage of the situation that we're in. And the big advantage of the situation we're in is that the studios aren't here, so we can really do whatever we want. It's the Wild West again out here, especially if these permitting things get loosened. We have access to an incredible amount of technology for very cheap. We don't have to go and get a $50,000 camera to make a good movie. We just don't. Technology is in our favor. The fact the studios aren't here is also in our favor. It's the Wild West, and we have technology that we can use. People have talked about this, and just hear me out on this, okay? iPhones. Hear me out. No, it's not the Sonys that I really like, okay? I don't have $50,000. But these cameras, especially when you use the Blackmagic app, especially when you use gimbals, especially when you use good lighting, are perfectly fine for independent movie production. And so the stuff that I'm working on, I'm going to be using that, and I'm going to be using this camera. I'm talking to you right now. The only problem with this camera is that it's 1080. It's not high enough resolution, but this one is. So I can maybe complement each other. But my point is, the technology is highly accessible. The other thing that's in our favor is distribution channels are highly accessible. You can self-distribute almost just as well as a distributor can. The only difference is exhibitions. But if you can do crowdfunding for your screenings, that problem is solved too. So really what you have to do is come up with a digital strategy. There's science behind digital marketing. It's about learning the tools of the trade of digital marketing. Fortunately, I have that background in order to create, cultivate, and distribute to an audience. So since all of the rules have changed, we can distribute however we want. And we can produce however we want. And we're at the helm here. We can do whatever we want. That's the other side of the coin. Now, here's the wild card, funding. This is the nut we need to crack. I do not believe, until things change, I do not believe that we should be going after investors for funding. Not at this level, not for independent productions. They just can't afford it. We cannot guarantee that they will get a return. And if we say we guarantee we'll get a return, we're probably lying. These movies are losing money or they're breaking even. No investor, unless you have an A-lister attached to it, unless you have a distribution deal attached to it, unless you have all this stuff attached, a pre-sale agreement for foreign rights, all of that stuff in your package, an investor just isn't going to do it because they're already losing money on sure things. Why would they go after a risk? It doesn't make sense. I think we should stop going to investors. And likewise, we should stop asking our networks to be investors. Like, it's not going to do any good if I go to my friends and family and raise $50,000 if I can't pay them back. And I know that this money isn't going to make that kind of money. We have to strive for paydays, not investments. These are not investment properties. These are not assets. They're paydays. They're work. That's how we need to look at it. So we need to pay for our time. We need to pay for our groceries. We need to pay for the other people's time and their groceries. That's it. All right? We're not trying to make $1 million here on the back end. Not going to happen. But if we look at this as workers instead of bankers, the scene changes a bit. Changes a lot, actually. And so now we are going to raise money not through investments, but through other means. We're trying to pay for work, not for assets. And the big idea I have around this is product placement and integration. There is a huge amount of companies out there who are mid-size that have sizable marketing budgets that dump tens of thousands of dollars a month into marketing campaigns in order to get eyeballs. A huge amount of companies. And I'm not talking about the top, like I'm not talking about Lamborghini and Warner Brothers doing a partnership. I'm talking about like Dr. Squatch or some of these brands that are on e-commerce. And they have these marketing budgets and their entire MO are eyeballs. Now, break down marketing real quick. How much time do I have? Okay. Break down marketing real quick. You have marketing that is for eyeballs, and you have marketing that is for sales. They're two different things, okay? And they support each other, but they're two different things. Marketing for sales, that's not what I'm talking about. If a company only has budget for sales, then they're going to be spending money on marketing for sales, and those are like click-through ads and stuff like that. That's not what we're after. Brands are probably too small for this, or they don't have a big enough budget for this. But the brands that are looking for eyeballs, they want brand awareness. In addition to sales, they have a different campaign for sales. The brand awareness people. These are the ones that have a really good e-commerce thing going, for example, and they have their conversion ads that are going on TikTok and whatever. But they're also doing other kinds of advertising to make sure. Let's use Dr. Squatch. Dr. Squatch started sponsoring comedy. Right? That's a good example of a company that's perfect for this kind of thing because they have marketing budgets for eyeballs. So all we have to do is create a marketing plan using marketing science and say, okay, this is the demographic that I'm after. Through my marketing plan, this is how many of them they are going to see this movie, and this is how much money we need. So if I'm able to get 20,000 people of your demographic, Dr. Squatch, let's say it's 25 to 35 male, right? And I know because of my marketing plan that at least 20,000 of your demo is going to watch my movie, and I present that to you, then you're going to give me part of your marketing budget to do that because that's a great brand engagement. Now we have co-marketing going on, so we can work on building campaigns for each other and do a lot of stuff on social media and share. And then you get to come on set, and then there's all of the behind-the-scenes stuff that you can use in your marketing and communications, and you've paid for a certain segment of the movie. You get 5 of those, pay for your movie. So all you have to do is find a meaningful way to integrate that brand into your script, into your movie, and to do it in a way that supports your story and doesn't detract from it. So that's part of storytelling. So it has to make sense. It can't be just any brand. It has to make sense. But you write them in as an integration, and now they're a part of the movie, and they're going to want to promote the movie, and they give you money for the movie. I think that's where our heads need to be, because we're paying for work, not for assets. We're paying for eyeballs in this case. And if you know that your movie's going to cost, let's say, 10 grand because you're doing a micro-budget thing, and you know that you've done your marketing plan, you know you're going to need $10,000 in marketing, double the production makes sense, right? So you need to raise $20,000. Go to 2 grants and ask for $10,000 each. They're going to pay for your movies and the marketing of their movie. The only hitch is they're going to want to do it with people that have experience or that look good. So you're going to have to build your portfolio. You're going to have to make yourself look good. I'm not at the level yet where I can do this, but I'm going to build some stuff, and I'm going to make stuff until I am at the level where I can show a portfolio and say, look, these are the things that I've made. I want to do this for you. Here's my plan. I need 10 grand. I need 10 grand. There's a $20,000 project. We'll make the movie, and you can come to set and meet the actors. That might not be the only way to fund movies. It certainly isn't. There's crowdfunding. But I think this is the kind of thing we need to start thinking about as independent filmmakers to get our projects done. And that's where my head is. So I'm not yet worried about the fact that Hollywood seems to be in a free fall. I think we can build a new Hollywood, and we can do it without having to beg, borrow, and steal. All we have to do is find ways to make value for people who can spend or pay you for that value. And that's where I'm at. I think that I babbled enough on this project, on this topic, or on these projects. I'll see you next time.